Have you ever walked into a place you've never been, yet felt you knew every corner? Have you ever met someone for the first time but felt a strange, almost magnetic familiarity, as if you've known them for lifetimes? In African spirituality, these moments are not dismissed as coincidence. They are messages, whispers from the past, echoes from before. In many Western teachings, reincarnation is often imagined as the soul wiping the slate clean, beginning anew with no memory of what came before. The life you live is your only focus. The past is gone, locked away. But here, in the spiritual traditions of Africa, the story runs differently. The past is not a chapter you close. It is a living river flowing alongside you, feeding the soil you stand on, shaping your path whether you see it or not. In this worldview, you are not merely the result of your parents' union. You are the continuation of a soul story that stretches back through time. The dreams you dream, the skills you have, the struggles you face, all may be part of a journey you've been walking for centuries. In African belief systems, the ancestors are not distant memories trapped in photographs or fading oral histories. They are active participants in the world. They walk beside you, speak through you, and sometimes, they are you. A child in a rural village, perfectly weaving a basket without ever being taught. An elder closing his eyes and naming a place he has never visited, but describing it in exact detail. A woman in a modern city, waking from a dream in tears, unable to explain why the song she heard in her sleep feels like home. These are not strange accidents. They are clues. Clues that your life is not the first time your spirit has walked the earth. In African thought, to ignore these signs is to live only half a life, disconnected from the deeper currents that shape your existence. To recognize them is to open the ancestral gate and step through. And once you step through, you begin to see the world differently. You begin to see yourself differently. You begin to realize that the struggles you face may not be yours alone, and neither are your strengths. In this journey we will walk through that gate together. We will meet the wisdom keepers of the Yoruba, the Igbo, the Zulu, and many others. We will explore how dreams, talents, fears, and even illnesses can be echoes of a life you've already lived. And we will see how the past is not gone, it's walking beside you, right now. The idea of living more than one life is not foreign to Africa, but it is never just about the individual. Here, rebirth is not random, nor is it simply about starting fresh. It is about continuity, responsibility, and destiny. And while the belief appears across the continent, each culture shapes it in its own way. The Yoruba, Ori, and Ayanmo. Among the Yoruba of West Africa, destiny is not an accident. Before birth, it is said your spirit kneels before Olodumare, the supreme creator, and chooses an Ayanmo, a life path. Your Ori, your inner head, is the spiritual essence that carries this choice. But here's the profound twist. Your Ori may carry more than just your chosen future. It carries the imprint of the journeys you've already walked. The lessons, strengths, and sometimes the mistakes of previous lives are stored within it, like the rings in a great tree. A gifted drummer may be tapping into rhythms they perfected generations ago. A midwife's skilled hands may be guided by an Ori that once served as a healer in a past existence. The Yoruba see such gifts not as random luck, but as proof that the Ori remembers. A person without respect for their Ori, the elders say, is like a traveler who breaks their own compass. Without honoring your Ori, you risk losing the guidance of all those who walked before you. The Igbo and Inaru. In many Igbo communities of southeastern Nigeria, the cycle of life and death is described with the phrase Ndinaru, life in the body. Life does not end with burial, it transforms. An ancestor may return, reborn within their own lineage, to complete unfinished work or to keep certain traits alive in the family. This belief is not abstract, it is lived. Families sometimes identify a newborn as the reincarnation of a grandparent or another relative, based on physical resemblance, birthmarks, mannerisms, or even uncanny knowledge the child should not have. In some cases, the returning ancestor is not there to bless, but to seek correction. If they lived a life of wrongdoing, they may return to make amends through a new body, repairing the family's spiritual balance. The Igbo understanding binds families together through time, making the past and present one unbroken chain. To harm your family is to harm yourself, because one day you may be born back into it. The Zulu Amadlozi. Far south, among the Zulu, past lives are entwined with the guidance of the Amadlozi, ancestral spirits. These are not abstract protectors. They are the spirits of people who once lived in this world, perhaps even as yourself in another form. When a person is born, it is believed that their spirit is accompanied by one or more Amadlozi who walk with them. These spirits might have been warriors, farmers, healers, and their wisdom is passed down not through books, but through dreams, intuition, and signs. But the Zulu warn, if the living neglect their connection to the Amadlozi, the guidance can turn into restlessness. The ancestor spirit may trouble the dreams, stir misfortune, or create illness until they are honored again. Here, the past life is never just a memory, it is a living relationship, one that must be maintained with respect and ritual. From the Yoruba's Ori to the Igbo's reborn ancestors, to the Zulu's guiding spirits, one truth emerges. In Africa, your life is not only yours. It is the next chapter in a book written by many hands, some of them your own in another time. If the past lives within you, it must find ways to speak. In African spirituality, these echoes are not silent. They appear in dreams, in your natural abilities, in the fears you can't explain, and even in the illnesses that seem to have no cure. The key is knowing how to recognize them. Dreams and visions, the soul's hidden diary. Among the Akan of Ghana, dreams are called the second sight. They are a bridge between the waking world and the spiritual realm. In many African traditions, recurring dreams are often interpreted as direct transmissions from the spirit world, sometimes from the very life you lived before. A person may dream of a village they have never visited, only to later discover it exists, and even recognize its layout. Another might speak in an unfamiliar language while sleeping, one that elders identify as an ancient tongue once spoken in the family line. These are not treated as fantasy. Elders may consult diviners to interpret such visions, searching for guidance or warning. Innate talents and fears, the fingerprints of spirit. Some gifts seem to arrive with us at birth. Among the Shona of Zimbabwe, it's believed that a child's unusual abilities are signs of spiritual inheritance. A young boy who picks up an instrument and plays like a master without lessons is said to be carrying the skill of a past life. The same is true for fears. A girl who trembles at the sight of deep water despite never having been near a river may be reacting to a past life death by drowning. In this view, your spirit remembers, even when your mind does not. spiritual ailments, unfinished business in the body. Not all sickness is caused by the body alone. In many African healing systems, when illness defies medicine, the cause may be spiritual. Among the Dagra people of Burkina Faso, certain persistent pains or misfortunes are seen as signs of ancestral imbalance, the lingering shadow of unresolved issues from a past life. For example, a man suffers constant misfortune in business, always betrayed by partners. A diviner might reveal that in a past life, he himself betrayed others in trade, and must now restore balance. A woman experiences a mysterious recurring pain in her leg. A spiritual reading might show that she died from an injury in that same spot in a previous existence. In such cases, the healer's role is not just to treat the body, but to heal the soul's memory, through ritual cleansing, offerings to the ancestors, or specific ceremonies to close that chapter for good. In African thought, the signs of your past lives are all around you. They are in your dreams, in your hands, in your fears, and sometimes in your suffering. To ignore them is to walk blind. To see them is to begin the journey toward understanding who you truly are. Across Africa, temples, shrines, and sacred enclosures were not just places of worship. They were machines of spiritual energy. The ancient builders believed that certain spaces could be tuned, much like a musical instrument, to resonate with divine forces. Their architecture was designed not only for beauty or grandeur but to channel cosmic power. In ancient Kemet, Egypt, the temple was called a Pernetur, house of the god. Each temple was aligned to astronomical bodies such as the rising of the sun on the solstice or the appearance of Sirius, the star associated with the goddess Isis. This was not decorative astronomy. It was believed that when the light of the sun or a star entered a temple's inner sanctuary at a precise moment, the energy of that celestial body would activate the sacred space, recharging the spiritual power within. Similarly, in Nubia, temples like those at Abu Simbel were cut directly into cliffs so that on certain days of the year, sunlight would illuminate the statues of gods deep inside. This was a visual and spiritual reminder that the universe itself participated in worship. In West Africa, sacred groves, Yoruba shrines, and Fan temples were often placed at specific points in the landscape believed to be energy nodes. These were spots where the life force flowed strongest. Here, carved pillars, symbolic doorways, and sacred altars acted as receivers and transmitters of divine power. Across the continent, certain architectural shapes were repeated. The pyramid, the cone, the dome, not by coincidence, but because these forms were thought to amplify prayer and intention. In Ethiopia, the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela seemed to sink into the earth, channeling not only the heavens but also the grounding force of the soil, balancing spiritual energy between above and below. To ancient African builders, a temple was never dead stone. It was alive, a living altar breathing in starlight, sunlight, earth force, and human devotion. Stepping inside was to enter a different vibrational reality, one where the material and spiritual worlds merged. For the ancient African master builders, a city was not merely a cluster of homes and streets, it was a reflection of the universe itself. Every wall, pillar, avenue, and courtyard could serve as a line in a cosmic diagram, bringing the order of the heavens down to earth. In Kemet, Egypt, the temple complexes along the Nile were positioned to mirror constellations in the night sky. The pyramids of Giza are famously aligned with Orion's belt, representing the god Osiris, while nearby structures reflected the Milky Way, which the Egyptians envisioned as a celestial river. In this way, the land became a mirror of the heavens. Walking through the city was like walking through a star map. In Dogon country of Mali, entire villages were laid out according to their sacred cosmology. The granaries symbolized the head of the cosmic being, houses formed its body, and communal spaces represented its heart. The orientation and structure of the village were designed to harmonize human life with the spiritual order of the cosmos. Among the Yoruba, sacred cities like Ile-Ife were planned with shrines, palaces, and marketplaces strategically placed to reflect their mythic worldview. The king's palace was often the symbolic center of the universe, from which spiritual and political power radiated outward like the spokes of a wheel. Even in Aksum of ancient Ethiopia, the placement of towering stelae royal tombs and ceremonial plazas hinted at a deliberate attempt to weave solar and lunar cycles into the heart of the city. The royal architects worked with the rhythm of the year so that rituals, harvests, and governance moved in sync with celestial time. This cosmic mapping was more than symbolism. It was a statement that human society should be governed by the same order that governs the stars. By building cities as microcosms of the universe, African civilizations created a constant reminder that life on Earth was part of a divine and harmonious design. Across the African continent, architecture was never just about shelter. It was about aligning human life with the eternal laws of creation. To achieve this, ancient builders turned to sacred geometry, a language of shapes, ratios, and patterns believed to be the very blueprint of the universe. In Kemet, ancient Egypt, architects and priests used the golden ratio, 1 minute and 1.618 seconds, and precise right angles to design temples and pyramids. These measurements weren't chosen for convenience. They reflected the balance found in nature, from the spirals of shells to the branching of plants. For the Egyptians, a temple wasn't built. It was born through the same mathematical harmony that governs the cosmos. The Great Pyramid of Khufu is a masterpiece of this sacred science. Its base perimeter divided by its height produces a near-perfect approximation of 2 pi, the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter, hinting at an understanding of both geometry and the spherical nature of the Earth. This wasn't random, it was a statement that the structure itself was a meeting place of heaven and earth. When the missionaries arrived in the 19th and 20th centuries, they thought they were bringing a new God to Africa. In reality, they were meeting a God who had already been here for thousands of years, known by different names, worshipped in different forms, yet understood as the same divine source of life. But colonization came with an agenda, not just to convert the soul but to control the mind. Churches became tools of empire, rewriting history to make African traditions seem primitive and demonic. Holy sites were abandoned, sacred languages silenced, and the keepers of African spiritual wisdom, priests, diviners, elders, were pushed to the margins. Yet African spirituality never disappeared. In the marketplaces, in the songs sung at night, in the quiet prayers whispered before dawn, the old ways survived. Christian and Islamic forms were adopted on the surface, but beneath them African belief systems continued to beat like a hidden drum. In West Africa, the masquerades of the Egungun still danced, even if now called cultural festivals. In southern Africa, the healers still called on ancestral spirits under the name of prophecy. In the Caribbean and the Americas, enslaved Africans disguised their orishas and loa behind the names of Catholic saints, keeping the old gods alive under a new mask. The struggle was no longer fought with spears or shields, but with memory, language, and ritual. Every proverb told, every libation poured, Every drumbeat played was a quiet rebellion against cultural erasure. African spirituality in the modern era has become more than religion. It is an act of resistance, a statement that Africa's soul cannot be colonized. For centuries, African spirituality was passed down through the spoken word, through rituals in the village square, through the wisdom of elders. It lived in places without written books, in drumbeats and carved symbols, in the patterns of weaving and dance. But in the age of colonization, this oral library was targeted for destruction. Now, something unexpected is happening. The same digital tools once used to spread foreign dominance are becoming weapons for cultural revival. The Internet, once the highway of Western narratives, is now carrying the voices of African spiritual teachers, historians, and storytellers across the globe. A young Nigerian can now learn about the Orishas on TikTok. A South African can find ancient Zulu praise poems in an online archive. A Ghanaian in London can join a virtual libation ceremony with elders back home. African spirituality is no longer confined to rural shrines. It is global, mobile, and interactive. Digital spaces have also broken the walls of shame built by colonial-era propaganda. For generations, people were taught to hide their spiritual heritage, to avoid ridicule, discrimination, or even violence. Now they are reclaiming it openly. Hashtags like #AfricanSpirituality, #DecolonizeYourMind, and #KnowYourRoots connect millions of people rediscovering their ancestral paths. But there's a warning here. The Internet spreads knowledge, but it also spreads misinformation. Sacred rituals risk becoming content, stripped of depth for the sake of entertainment. Elders warn that without proper guidance, people might confuse spiritual practice with aesthetic performance. Still, the digital age offers African spirituality something colonization could never allow: a direct and censored platform to tell its own story to the world. It is not revival in the old sense, but evolution. The sacred drum now beats in both the village square and the Wi-Fi signal. The survival of African spirituality has always depended on adaptation. It endured the sword of conquest, the cross of missionaries, the chains of slavery, and the laws of suppression. Each era forced it to transform, sometimes openly, sometimes in secret. Now, in the 21st century, it faces a different kind of challenge: globalization. You see, African spirituality is no longer a purely local practice. It exists in a hyper-connected world where cultures constantly mix. Young Africans in Lagos, Nairobi, and Johannesburg can quote Yoruba proverbs one moment, then scroll through K-pop videos the next. The question is, can an ancient spiritual system survive in a world of constant distraction? Many elders believe it can, but only if the youth understand that spirituality is not a fashion trend. The Orishas, the Loa, the Abuzum, and the countless other deities across the continent are not Instagram aesthetics. They are living forces. Without genuine practice, rituals, offerings, moral discipline, and deep study, the connection will weaken. There's also a powerful movement brewing. The idea that African spirituality should not just survive but lead in the global spiritual conversation. For centuries, the world was taught to look to Rome, Mecca, or India for spiritual authority. But what if Africa reclaimed its place as the mother of world spirituality? What if the philosophies of Ubuntu, the cosmic balance of Ma'at, and the wisdom of the Orishas became part of solving humanity's modern crises? Already, African thinkers are merging ancestral wisdom with science, psychology, and environmental studies. Sacred groves are being recognized as biodiversity havens. Traditional conflict resolution methods are inspiring peace-building programs. The old ways are finding new applications. The future will likely see two parallel paths: a revival of traditional elder-guided practices for those who want authenticity, and a more hybrid, urban-friendly form for those living in cities and diaspora communities. If both paths honor the same spiritual core, African spirituality will not only survive, it will shape the future. Something remarkable is happening. African spirituality, once forced into the shadows, is now crossing oceans and influencing people from Brazil to Brooklyn, from Cuba to Cape Town. But this isn't the first time it has gone global. The difference is that, for the first time in centuries, it is emerging without disguise. During slavery, African spiritual systems survived by hiding in plain sight. In Haiti, the Loa wore the faces of Catholic saints. In Brazil, the Orishas danced under the names of Our Lady and Saint George. In Cuba, the drums of Santeria beat out rhythms older than the Spanish language itself. These faiths spread, but always under the cloak of another religion for safety. Now that cloak is being removed. Young people of African descent in the diaspora are digging into archives, traveling back to their ancestral lands, and learning original chants, divination systems, and rituals. Even non-Africans are being drawn to these traditions, fascinated by their emphasis on balance with nature, community harmony, and spiritual accountability. The Internet has played a huge role in this reawakening. Priests and priestesses who once taught only within villages now stream ceremonies live. Sacred chants are preserved on YouTube. Digital archives are collecting oral histories so they cannot be lost again. This is both a blessing and a risk, because while knowledge is spreading faster than ever, it can also be misused, commercialized, or stripped of its sacred discipline. This reawakening is also challenging old colonial narratives. For centuries, African spirituality was branded as primitive, demonic, or backward. Now, people are realizing that it holds complex theologies, sophisticated metaphysics, and moral systems that rival, and sometimes predate, those of so-called world religions. From the drumbeats of candomblé in Salvador, to Ifa divination ceremonies in New York, to Maasai blessings on environmental projects in Kenya, African spirituality is no longer a silent survivor. It is becoming a teacher to the world again, just as it once was in the dawn of human civilization. In the end, all paths in African spirituality lead back to one place: the ancestors. Not as distant memories, not as abstract history, but as active participants in daily life. In African thought, the ancestors are not gone. They are the bridge between the living and the divine. They are the guardians who whisper warnings in dreams, who open paths when the living are trapped, and who close doors when danger approaches. Their power is not in the past, it is in the present. Across the continent, this connection takes many forms. In the Yoruba tradition, Egungun masquerades bring the ancestors to dance among the living, shrouded in bright cloth and mystery. Among the Shona, spirit mediums speak with the voice of forebears during ceremonies, guiding the community in times of crisis. Among the Akan, the pouring of libation is a sacred act, a way to call the names of those who came before so they will never be forgotten. But the call to the ancestors is not just ritual. It is a reminder of responsibility. If they built, we must protect. If they resisted, we must continue. If they suffered, we must heal. African spirituality teaches that when you honor your ancestors, you are also accountable to them. You cannot claim their blessings while ignoring their values. In the modern world, where many feel rootless, the ancestral call is an anchor. It reminds us that we are not drifting alone through life. We are part of a chain, each link forged by sacrifice and love. And so the journey comes full circle. From the hidden survival of African faiths through slavery and colonization, to the modern reawakening, to the timeless presence of the ancestors. This is not just history. This is a living river flowing from the dawn of humanity into tomorrow. The question is no longer whether African spirituality will survive. The question is, will we answer the call? If this journey through African spirituality has opened your eyes, don't let it end here. Share this story because the world still hides the truth of Africa's sacred traditions. Let people know that long before the slave ships, before the missionaries, before the borders, Africa was already speaking to God in 1,000 beautiful languages. Leave a comment with the name of your ancestors or the traditions from your homeland. Let us honor them together. And if you felt the power of this history, give this video a like so the algorithms cannot silence it. Most importantly, subscribe because we are only at the beginning. Every week, we uncover another hidden chapter, another stolen truth, another reason to be proud. African spirituality is not dead. It is not lost. It lives in us and it will keep living if we keep telling this story.